Morning. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Is it morning for you?
No, it's like 8:30 for me. Yeah.
Oh, okay. My apologies if this wasn't a great time.
No worries, no worries. All good. Yeah,
Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
absolutely. My pleasure.
Today, I'm joined by Kamesh, lead developer advocate at Snowflake, where he's helping engineers, architects, and builders unlock the full potential of data and AI. Snowflake is a cloud-based data platform that lets organizations store, manage, analyze, and build applications with data and AI, all in one place. Kamesh brings over 2 decades of experience across enterprise software, open source platforms, and cloud-native technologies. He's an extremely active open source contributor, a Google developer expert for Google Cloud, a Google certified digital leader, and someone who lives and breathes learn, do, and share. Kamesh, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much, Brendan. Thanks for having me, and it's a great pleasure. Though it's late in the evening, but I love to talk to you about anything about developers. Yeah.
Great. So let's talk about Snowflake. Can you describe some of Snowflake's key products? Also, what are some of the typical use cases for organizations?
Okay, that's a very broad, super broad question,
I
but
know.
I try to answer like more from a developer perspective because that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I'm intended to do as well. If you ask me like what Snowflake's key product lines or like or something, like it's not a people misunderstood as a typical warehouse, but it's not a typical warehouse,
Yeah.
right? It's a place where we do analytics, lots of analytics done, but analytics at scale. That's very precise thing that I see as an organization, but which is distributed, bringing in all the cloud related stuff into data world, right? So distribution, sharing, redundancy, like data hiding, governance. You can call lots and lots of stuff. And for example, marketplace, that's something which you'll I think which I say like it's where you can bring in your data products and then sell the data products on the market. So we need a platform for data products, right? And I should also call right now, we call them like in short, like the latest thing which we tell like where data does more because it's not just analytics, also data does few more stuff, right? I think
Yeah.
with the adding of Snowflake Cortex, which is our flagship Gen AI thing that we added right now recently.
Mhm.
So that makes you do more with your data, right? For example, you can just do sentiment analysis on your data, right? So take the data out and find out what sentiment around it, right? And maybe like you can just with Streamlit, which is another open source thing that we acquired, you can quickly build chatbots which can help you to kind of talk to people, make people understand documents, extract content from it, search content from it, and all other stuff, right? In short, like if you take like anything with data that needs to be done at scale and with performance inclusive, right? So that's a place where Snowflake fits in.
Who are Snowflake's different users? So developers, data scientists, like who's using Snowflake at various organizations?
I think so you could call already listed that, so we call them developers as builders, like everybody who build applications another way, right? So we have data engineers, we have data scientists, we have data analysts,
Yeah.
business analysts. That's where Cortex fits in, right? So Snowflake Cortex API is all about like how we can derive insights from data by talking to data, right? That's what we call them as, like. So maybe you don't need to write complex SQL queries. You can just ask English language questions, and it could answer you in SQL or the more a chart way or a tabular way or whatever way you want. So if you ask me about the personas, like I could say like the personas could be everywhere, like who build applications. That's one set of people, like developers, builders. That's one set of people who basically do some research around your data. So that's going to be your analyst or researchers, data scientists, and all these people. And there's going to be business analysts and other people who are going to gain insight from your data to share it for the organization needs. So those are the various different kind of personas you could imagine. That's immediately strikes top of my mind, like who could use Snowflake, right? For the moment they want some data platform.
So that's interesting. So Cortex, you mentioned, is that geared towards non-technical users? Or if you are technical, there's opportunities for you to use it in that way as well?
I think so. It's both. So
Okay.
very simple in Snowflake, we the whole guideline principle by which we make these products are all about like making everything that is easy, connected, and trusted. So that's our what do you call like guideline of building anything on thing, right?
Okay.
If you talk about Cortex, it's both for people who are technical and non-technical,
Okay.
right? For non-technical, as I said earlier, like you can talk to data, so you don't need to have complex questions around it. Like you can ask questions that can get you queries, answers, insights, and other stuff. For people like, for example, if you imagine for a developers, right? Let's imagine a case like I have a very huge JSON file, for example, like, and then I need to format it, change a case, and everything. So traditionally, you write programs to basically go down this tree and then kind of do the stuff, right? With Cortex AI and other things that we already built in low code solution, what we call as is out of the box functions that we can use directly to kind of go do whatever thing on the data, right? Just chunk the data into smaller ones or change the case or change formatting, transform the data. So in a way, like for a developer, if you think it's like how we can do a transformation of data with AI, right?
Right.
That's one of the use cases that I'm thinking of, right?
Okay.
So to answer your question straight, it's for anybody who wants to do something quicker and faster. And
Okay.
secure.
So how did you initially get involved with Snowflake? Were you kind of a general user? Were you an advocate of the platform? How did you become a developer advocate at that company?
Okay, I think so. So this dates back, like it's not like I came inside Snowflake as a different person and different for example role and then changed like this. It's not like that. So I've been with developer advocacy for the last I should say like 10 years, 12 years out of my whole career.
Oh,
So we started with Red Hat, like where I was doing advocacy for Kubernetes. How do you get Java workloads on Kubernetes and other stuff? Then went on the service mesh and all other stuff, serverless, Knative, a lot of other stuff, right? So this opportunity came in the way that they were looking for someone with the developer advocacy experience to kind of start advocating for Snowflake product and product line, taking them to the end developers, right? So so that's a core, right? Because it's the bottom up approach in any organization if you think about like because so you need to target like the lay I should call the layman of the product, mean to say like
okay.
the one somebody who puts his hands on a keyboard every day, right? So
Yep.
he's the decision maker end of the day, right? People will usually say like the paycheck writers are the decision makers, but they are not the decision makers in my opinion because if I have 10 developers working for me and they are not comfortable with this product, then I'm not going to use a product,
Yeah.
right? Because I can't go keep hiring 10, 10, 10 kind of stuff, right? So that's where I think the whole thing started, and this came as a developer advocacy opening itself, asking, hey, are you interested in advocating for Snowflake products, right? So whatever we have, and how do we take it to market and take it to not technically to market, take it to more to developer market, right? Developer segment of the whole market.
So take me back in your career. You have a bachelor's degree in computer science, master's degree in information technology, over 20 years of experience. How did you get into developer advocacy in the first place?
Okay, that's a great question. I always love to share about that. So I think if you ask me like the I joined as let me go back like did like when I joined like the 2001 was the time like when I kind of jumped into a job because like obviously you know that 2K Y2K and all these things which
Yeah.
happen, and so we were on the recession time, and then
Right.
people I think want to get in some job, and I think I also try to see right now when I dated back, my very first job that I did right was a table definition on a PostgreSQL thing, right? And recently we just acquired Crunchy Data as well. So PostgreSQL has been my go-to database since that day one because being it's open source.
Mhm.
And the initial, I should say like 15, 16 years until 2014 or something. So my career was mostly on a company of a GSIs, what we call as like global solution integrators, like
Okay.
your Accentures, your IBMs, your Cognizants, and HCLs, Wipros, all these people, right? So I basically started building solutions, working as a part of team as an analyst, kind of program analyst kind of stuff, like building solutions, writing code. I always had the fascination of to write code, and even today I write code. So I think I cannot be without writing a code every in a single day. So that's how I see myself as.
Oh.
And then I slowly transformed my thing into what we call as technology architecture. So in Accenture, I spent quite a bit of time in Accenture, especially on the technical side of stuff. So part of the whole group called as technology architecture group within Accenture. So technology architecture, where helping solutioning, architecting solutions more from a technical side, rather than the solutioning side of things. So that's where the whole thing happened. And even when I joined Red Hat, I joined as a JBoss consultant, the middleware consultant there. So those are those things, though. But one fine day, like a couple of days, like I was just starting to think like, hey, what should I do next, right? Because I've been doing this for quite some time. But then I kind of recollected back and trying back to my philosophy, learn more, share more, or do more, right? So I felt okay throughout this journey. So I had lots of hiccups, right? Blockers, hurdles, something which you have to face and then do something. And those are the time, if I could say like, now we have AI, we have all these kind of tools. I still even tell to my son sometime like, hey, when I first wrote my Java code, it was on a notepad. So there was no intelligence. There was no intelligence, nothing there. So my biggest bet for that time, I think still I released that time because I used to go to the Java docs every time to go find out what methods we have,
Yeah.
and then come back and write the code, do Java C and all of that stuff, which is super interesting because I was able to understand how do we effectively use docs, right? I think that's something which is always I love to do that. So now like coming back with all these hurdles, like what I learned, like whenever the solution failed, the solution performed well as part of my architecture. So I want to carry all these knowledge and share it across. So I want to draw this little analogy here. So if you see the whole Indian cultural stuff, right? Just to draw an example here. So we have lots and lots of historical mythical books or mythical stuff, and then something more. I don't call it religious, but the way of living kind of books. Lots of other stuff, which dates back to I think to BCs together. Like I don't even know the time which is born. But one of the things what how it got transferred, even because the catastrophes that happen in the world, the natural disasters that happen in the world. So, but still that knowledge has been carried over from centuries to centuries to centuries to people, even people who are living today.
Right.
Right. And the simple thing that they do is like they do this mental transfer, right? Whatever you know, you share with people, right? And then the people, that guy is going, or he or she is going to take it to next set of people, right?
Right.
And that's how it goes, and it goes generation to generation. So I thought, okay, that'll be nice. We'll have ways to document stuff, but if you for a second, if you think this is even more an easier way, where you can keep telling people, okay, this is how you write Java code, this is your deploy of Kubernetes, this is how you write thing in Snowflake, this is a SQL you write, this is Gen AI stuff you do.
Right.
You keep telling like 10 times in a year, for example, right? So 10 different conferences, 10 different meetups, or whatever it all. So you're going reaching so many number of people, at least let's say 10 into 100, like you're reaching 1,000 people the whole time, right? So I think those 1,000 people are going to carry to next 1,000 set of people, right? So it still carries stuff. So I think that's fascinated me. Okay, why can't I share these tips, these smaller things, which I feel help me a lot, starting from
Right.
the tools that I use every day,
Yeah.
to the biggest thing that I did in my life, like writing a book or writing something to contributing to open source or something like that. So which kind of helps somebody with a similar wavelength, a similar kind of thought, like can take it forward, right? They could go and apply, right? So I always felt that your ideas, it doesn't go exactly like that. Some of your ideas will be a spark for a new idea,
Sure.
right? So
Yeah.
that I strongly believe in that. It's not that my idea is going to be applied exactly as it is.
I love that story. So you have a hands-on experience with a lot of different technologies, obviously dedicated to educating developers on these cutting-edge technologies. If I give you the name of a technology, can you explain what it is along with its use case?
Yeah, let me give it a try. So
Okay. Kubernetes.
So Kubernetes, like the only thing I loved about it is like I started to work with containers way back, even in Docker was in Docker releases. So Docker was not even outside.
Okay.
I love to share this story every time somebody asks me about Kubernetes and other stuff. Is that I used to remember like I had when I was in Accenture, so I had this little chat with a bunch of my folks on the technology thing. So saying, hey. So we were using Tomcat and JBoss during that time, right? I was just telling them, hey, how nice it will be like if we instead of a VM, of the trimmed down version of a VM,
Oh.
so which could have just run Tomcat alone, just the file directories and other stuff, and don't have anything else. And totally, to be very honest with you, I don't know about LXCs, I don't know about Linux, I don't know about containers, nothing about that at the time.
Yeah.
Just a thought, and then there was a first version of, if I remember, OpenShift, the very first version, which was kind of doing the spinning of a small VMs in similar fashion, like LXCs, similar to LXCs, but not exactly LXCs. And then
Okay.
I had a chat with one of my another friend in Argentina, like who was part of Execute then. So asking, and then he told that there is an LXC, right? So, and then since then, containers and then packaging an application, making the developer, the DevOps philosophy spring up from the day one you start to write a code, right? I think that started with in a case like probably Kubernetes is a maybe a polished version of it, but we started with containers and how do you orchestrate containers and how do you take containers and deploy it in production? How you fast move into production, trim down what is required from your side to set up infrastructure.
Okay.
That's how I do. Again, it also has a sad side of it, like being complex infrastructure, which is becoming sometimes if it's huge, it's hard to maintain as well, right? So, but if I go like one minus down Kubernetes, I just say to containers. That's how you package stuff. You make things easier for
Okay.
to be shared amongst your developer community. Yeah.
I see. What is CI/CD?
Okay, I always probably this is a lot of places is being used in conjunction with CI/CD, CI/CD together, but I always keep them separate, right? Continuous integration, continuous deployment are
Okay.
two different things, right? Because like especially when you're coming in a Kubernetes cloud kind of world, so one ensures the integrity of the code. That's what I call a CI, continuous integration, making sure that every time you do a commit, your commit is verified that it goes well. And continuous deployment is basically like how do you actually take a particular version and apply it on a particular release, right? So in other way, even if you talk continuous deployment, is I can also put another aspect of it, like we call this new thing called as GitOps kind of stuff, like where whatever the version in Git is a version of truth, right? So which means that even if my whole data center goes off, that's another going back to Kubernetes world, like with manifests and other stuff. If everything goes off, all I require is take a particular version from Git and apply that, and my infrastructure is back, right? So that's a deployment piece, right? So always like people try to mix them together, but these are two different things which run in two different parallel stuff, but the one is dependent of one the other, right? Especially when you go on the container world, container all continuous integration does is like build that container image and make it ready in a registry or repository. For example, what we call as Docker containers or any kind of container image, right? And continuous deployment is like take for example Kubernetes manifest and apply, right? Or take your Terraform scripts and run them, or Ansible scripts and run them, right? So I think that's what is more of continuous deployment, the more in an idempotent way.
What is service mesh?
Okay, that's a great thing. So service mesh is probably like I could call something which kinds of wires your services together, and kind of like for example when these all these microservices came into picture, right? We had tons of services, distributed services that were running across multiple different places.
Okay.
And what we are trying to do at the time, if I really rewind back, when that whole microservices boom started, like people started deploying microservices, Java-jar kind of thing to deploy applications. But what basically happened then is like they need other tools. For example, Netflix came with a series of tools. For example, Istrix was one, and there was a telemetry one, Jaeger was one, Zipkin was one. So they need a lot of other tools to kind of go trace, find out if the service is failing,
Okay.
the service is going to talk, how do I fail and go over to something else. So there were a lot of tools that was involved, and it kind of like if you imagine like it became a super bloated deployments, right? Because we had so many tools to maintain apart from your application. So what Service Mesh tried to solve, in my opinion, was like, okay, don't worry about all those things. Like they get automatically instrumented within your application.
Yeah.
Just deploy the application within my thing. I give you the gateway, I give you the forwarder, I will give you the TLS, everything configurable, so that your application just needs to concentrate only on the business logic, right? So you're this much huge application stack, if you imagine, that became so much thin, right? That's how I think as.
Okay.
So that's how. But other things which are mandatory infrastructure things like your telemetry or your TLS or security and everything that got plugged into your application automatically. That's what service mesh.
So is service mesh a concept, like bringing services together, tying them together, or is it a tool to do this?
I can say like it's a conceptualized tool if you
Okay.
want to be, because like because the concept was originally was still there, because even without service mesh as a tool, still the concept was there, because I need telemetry, I need traceability, I need elasticity, I need login, what we call as microservice properties. Everything was still there, but only thing is that we had multiple tools doing the job. So what service mesh try to do is like take all bunch of those things which could be done at the infrastructure layer and move, and they don't need to be, they get automatically plugged in. So
I
the
see.
concept was made as a tool, right? That's what, and then it kept on improving again and again. Like there was layer 4, layer 7, layers, and all these different layers of network. I'm not a networking guy, so maybe like those are a few things which are again remote. So Istio was the very first service mesh, if you can imagine, like which I worked on.
Yeah.
So which was kind of doing this job, right? I think technically, if you come from a Java microservice world into a typical Kubernetes microservice world, that's where you're seeing like, hey, how these things can help you alleviate all these pain points.
I see. Okay. Here's an easy one. What is serverless?
Okay, serverless is absolutely nothing to do with no servers. Obviously, there is servers. So I remember the very first conference I attended giving a talk on serverless. Like there was somebody like who was holding this big CPU box, and somebody was kicking, saying, "Okay, there is the serverless, right?" This is myth. Like so, I think the way you put down these questions were absolutely nice, because like we started with Kubernetes, we started with CI/CD, we started with service mesh. But what happened one point of time is like we need to have those tons of services or your little VMs or little containers or whatever it is kept running 24 cross 7. So end of the day, all drills down to your cloud costs or your private data cloud or private data center cost and everything, right? Because for example, let's take a very simple example, right? Let's say I have a cron job which runs like, let's say every night at 11:45, for example, right? And it takes like 15 minutes to warm up, and then runs at 11:45, and then 15 minutes to warm down. After 12, still next day 11:30 or whatever it is, a server is still running. It's not doing anything, right?
Yeah.
So what we basically in that case we can think of is like, so what the serverless concept, what happened is like basically I start something at 11:30, run the job, complete the job, warm it down at 12 o'clock. So basically, instead of running 24 cross 7, my application is going to just run 30 minutes, right? Which is going to be a huge cost saving.
Yeah.
And plus, apart from cost, I can also drive these resources to something else where it is needed. So that's where the whole serverless thing starts to come, right? I think, especially with containers, it was helping a lot, because I can warm down and warm up a container pretty quickly, very fast, right? I don't need to wait for those things. Yeah.
So basically, it's like spinning up and running a server as needed. So imagine there's a server running at 11:30, 11:45, 12 o'clock. It spins down, and then 24
Right.
hours later, it's going to spin up another instance of that server or the same server.
Exactly. So it warms down, warms up. Like so, with Kubernetes, we have the scale down, scale up concept, which was aiding to that. So it made me say, okay, I can scale my replicas to 0. I can bring my scale replicas to 100, 200, whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Based on infrastructure.
So let's talk a bit about your developer advocacy at Snowflake. How do you decide what you're going to talk about or what you're going to demo? What's your process for selecting topics? In other words, like Cortex is like this latest tool. So you're going to speak at conferences, you're going to have presentations. How do you know what to develop? Is it basically like whatever you're interested in and passionate about? Does it come from the developer community? Does it come from leadership? What does it look like?
Okay. I think definitely the leadership thing is definitely there, because that's where they define the vision, like how the whole organization is to go. So
Yeah.
I think nothing so. But if you ask me, at least if you ask me, like I always felt when you are a developer, there's lots of intuition that comes into play.
Okay.
I always think like that. It's not just like we catch something from this shelf and then get it and start doing it, right? So
Right.
sometimes like I start to write something, and then it goes like what you call branches from that, right? So for example, let's say I start with Cortex. So for example, like I could say the same thing. Like I started with the last week's demos, which I did. Like basically, I started to do with Snowflake Intelligence, which we launched in Summit. Then okay, I came to Snowflake Intelligence. Then I thought, okay, there is something called as MCP server that I can add.
Right.
Then like how do I take the MCP server and put it into Claude?
Yeah.
Or how do I take the MCP server and get it into VS Code? So So and then I decided, okay, now I'm speaking Cortex just speak English. So why can't I use Cortex to talk in other language, understand other languages, like for example, Indian
Right.
languages? How do I wire it up? What is the orchestration thing that's
Okay.
required, right? The all the older Kubernetes, CI/CD, and all this orchestration thing like that comes back and say, okay, what is the app world of data, right? How do we apply app concepts or app ideologies or principles in data world,
I
right?
see.
So those things also kind of build up, and then like we get to we try to keep up 10 different demo concepts. Maybe like 5 might work, 3 might work, 2 might
Okay.
work, depending upon what you choose, right? But again, very strong factor of that is your intuition, right? When you try, for example, when I try some demo and it goes to its shape, and then I feel okay, there's a goodness feeling that you get, okay, we are going in the right direction, right?
Mhm.
And then we keep building on it, right? And something, it will not, how much ever you hit it, it will not move beyond a point, right? And we'll try to bang our head, try to find our resources, ask someone else. So it never moves across, right? Those are something which, in my opinion, needs to be shelved or thrown off.
Okay.
Some cases, like, because you don't have enough time and energy to kind of spend on it, but the other ones you can keep polishing it, right? So
Yeah.
that's where, like, I like the idea of Google's idea of calling like launch and iterate, being to say like maybe we launch one thing right now and then we keep iterating that multiple times, right?
Yeah.
Especially with the conference things, one advantage we get is like we won't be creating demos or talks for each conference, right? You'll be applying them one talk for 10 different conferences because
Yeah.
you're going to reach out to 10 different people, right? And sometimes what happens is when you go and speak and you go and deliver, there might be some questions or there might be some discussions which come out of those things, and that will again reshape your another one, right? So, and then at times we keep thinking, okay, how do we present the same thing in a different way? Same wine in a new bottle or whatever we call this, right? So, same thing, right? So if you ask me in very short, I go by first the leadership vision, what they want, the
Yeah.
product line they decide, and then very, very strongly on my intuition, like
Mhm.
what do you want. Yeah.
Do you have to coordinate with other developer advocates who might be having similar ideas, similar intuition, if you will? Like someone's already doing this that you're thinking about. It's like, do you have to coordinate that?
I think sometimes it might work where we can collab and do stuff. And
Yeah.
majority of the time, if you ask me, the most of the developer advocacy roles are all IC roles, individual contributor roles, where
Yeah.
mostly they work independently.
Okay.
And at least for me, like all the time, it has been more regional, like what I do, like on more
Oh,
on APAC, Asia Pacific side of things, like than on other side. So which means that even though it could be similar ones what they are working in other regions, but I have to take and shape it for the local region, right? How it goes to the local thing, right?
oh, I see.
Again, man, some amount of cultural aspect also comes into picture, because like the way you tell story in the US, the way you tell the story in Europe, and way you tell
Oh,
the story in Asia Pacific are totally different,
yeah.
right? That's where your cultural aspect also comes in, and where I want to think about, hey, how do I change my story? This is the same story that my friend there
Yeah.
told, but I want to take it up and show it to them so that like people in this region understand it.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah. So which means that also there'll be back and forth. You also collaborate back and you also improve it. In other way, like I remember my mentor from Red Hat, like his name is Bert Sutter. So when I kind of, he used to tell me like, with developer advocates are entertainers on stage, right?
Yeah.
That's what he usually say to me, because when somebody comes to listen to you, like you need to entertain them, because that's how you tend to connect with them,
Yeah.
with their thing, and then start to flow whatever thing you want to tell them, right? That's exactly, again, when you are becoming an entertainer, you are art performer, where improvisation is very, very important. That's what if as you said in the earlier part of a conversation, like every developer advocate says, like something fails on the stage is a boon to them, because that's where you improve, right? That's where you
Yeah.
tell, like your real instinct comes out and say, okay, what do you want to tell the people, right?
Yeah.
Again, instinct, intuition. So these are all always tied for a developer advocate. Yeah.
Are you involved at all with the development of the Snowflake platform itself?
Uh, if you ask me, like not directly contributing any piece of code to write that stuff, but definitely as a developer advocate, there is always a feedback that goes
Yeah.
from a developer advocate to the engineering team, right? So
Okay.
if you imagine it's a two-way, so you sit in between community developers
Yeah.
and your engineering team, right? You take the feedback from the community, give it to them, saying, hey, these are the community feedback that they're looking for. What all things could be materialized into product feature tomorrow, right? And also, like, the product comes back and say, hey, we have these product launches that you're launching right now. Plan it out and see how we can take it to developers. So it's always that. But sometimes, at least I have seen, not specifically with Snowflake or with anybody else, but I specifically sometimes your contribution or your repositories that you make, like I make all my repositories demos as open source, which is publicly available for people.
Okay.
So sometimes a piece of code from that, which could be improved and used inside a product. I've seen that happening many times.
Okay.
So I think that gives you a little joy as well, saying, hey, something which I developed, like it gone into the product, right? It's going to be used by multiple other people. So that happens. I think I also seeing that there is also possibilities of similar thing happening in Snowflake as well, where maybe like it could not be directly contributing, but you will be contributing a piece of something, right? And then which could be taken by the actual engineers and kind of improved it.
I mean, you sort of answered the question, the next part of the question, which was there must be so many ideas that are coming from developers, right? Like, what's the channel for that? Is it just I submit a feature request? It would be great if Snowflake did this. This is something you should integrate. Like, what's the process for developers to submit ideas?
The best way, if you ask me, for anywhere the developers is one is obviously raising GitHub issues if it's
Yeah.
going to be something on GitHub or any kind of platform where the code is hosted. Usually for things like some amount of closed sources, there is always the way to launch bugs like Jira and other
Yeah.
bugs, which you can go launch your Jira tickets and then that gets added. And then that's like the only thing which I suggest people or developers is that don't lose your enthusiasm if one of the if your submitted bugs is not taken into consideration, right? Because there is a lot of factors which come into picture. I remember a few people asking me like, hey, I started to contribute to open source, but I see that people don't accept my PR, so people don't contribute. I think even I have lots of rejects when I was did my initial contributions. Even now I have rejects. I don't say no, right? But again, it depends upon something, right? When you're contributing, and if you're not part of this whole the process of deciding what should be the shape of the product, then you're just a contributor, right? Which means that there should be a strong reason why this has to be materialized into a product. For example, like there could be 100 customers who are asking this particular feature, right? Or there is kind of 10 amounts of hundreds amounts of developers who bring in so much of my thing to me, like they are kind of looking in, right? So which means that to answer very shortly, don't lose your hope that if your first contribution is not accepted, but
Right.
keep doing it, right? Because why, when you start to do like, if even that is itself like submitting a I mean, a GitHub issue or a Jira ticket, that itself is an art, in my opinion, because you have to write what's there in your mind,
Yeah.
right? What you want, right? So what was expected, what was not working, and what you want, right?
Yeah.
So which means that there's exactly some expectation out of the product, right, that you're trying to do, and how you want to apply this product. So which will also gives the actual feedback to them, right? In many cases, your issues, I mean, your contributions might be rejected because you might not have properly explained what you actually want, right? Maybe it doesn't need to be a big essay.
Yeah.
Maybe just a few lines of thing and make sure that you hit the right points, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where. So again, it's not just and people again they have again a false belief that code, contributing code is just the only way of contributing to any product. It either be open source or closed source. Not like that. So your get started examples, right? Write examples, write demos, right? Write other stuff, which could also be how we use, right? It gives you various way of using the product. When people from the engineering or people like us, like develop advocates, when they come and see stuff, they know like what are the various way you try to use it, right? So
Right.
again, so which means that anything that gets into the repository, right, as a contributor is a contribution. End of the day,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and you mentioned this earlier, Snowflake was kind of originally known for reinventing the data warehouse. What was the
Mhm.
first big step that Snowflake made beyond data warehousing? Like, what was the first new tool or feature it built on top of the data warehouse? where it became something different? It was no longer just data warehousing.
I think, see, I don't know the whole history. If you could ask me, like, what about people told me about, because I've just with Snowflake for a year
Yeah.
plus. But ask me the very first thing, like I could, in my opinion, if you ask me in the 1 hour, 1 year, what I know about Snowflake is a way like how they redefine the whole warehouse terminology, right? It's not actual warehouse. It's just a compute that runs your query, right? In a more optimized way, right? Understanding how it needs to be run, right?
Okay.
It's not a warehouse. I think it's never, they call it a cloud data warehouse or something, but never was a warehouse for that matter, right? It's all the way like how you run your application, right? Because I need to know like how to run my query, like in a scaled way, because it is an analytical platform, right? I think that's where that's the whole, in my opinion, like
I
how
see.
it kind of reshaped, right? And if I when I was going through the architecture of how the whole stuff was built, that's where the whole thing was done into core, right? Because we technically separated storage and compute. So
Okay.
when it works, I think that's most of the time, if you see any kind of a database platform or data specific platform, data platform in very general, everything has been tightly coupled with with your storage and compute. So
Okay.
so which was having a problem with scalability, especially when cloud bust happened, right? So that's where, in my opinion, if you ask me, that's the killer thing that they did, like the architecture style, like where
Right.
they separated these two things so that they can scale independently of each other.
So Snowflake was always a query tool. It always provided a way to query your data, regardless of where your data was, right? You can have any number of different data sources. Snowflake would
Right.
allow you to tie those together and allow you to query all of those different data sources.
Right, exactly. I think so. That's what we call them as connectors.
Yeah.
And we have tons of connectors to connect to anything you want. For example, SharePoint or a Google Drive
Okay.
or any kind of cloud storage providers. I think, or sources like Kafka to your thing. Like we have all connectors for everything, even from OLTP to OLAP databases. And recently, if you read about the data hole acquisition, which is now rebranded as OpenFlow within Snowflake, even if you see that brings in a lot of connectors right
Okay.
now, which means that the data source of data could be anywhere,
Mhm.
but could be brought in from anywhere and then start working on that data, right, within Snowflake. Either you apply AI or you apply analytics or take it to marketplace, do whatever you want.
And if I'm using Snowflake, I don't care where the data is, right? Like the sources of the data is abstracted, right? I'm using the tools within Snowflake to access, manage, query, do all these different things with my data, but they could be in different silos, different data sources.
Absolutely. So the silos were broken. That's another one which you always say. Like there is no silos, there's no redundancy is required
Yeah.
because each business unit might be creating the same redundant data. So those are all broken. And those are all transparent.
Yeah.
And more than all, one thing which is lots of people don't know about Snowflake is the layer of security, the layer of trust that we build. Everything, every operation, every little operation that we do within Snowflake has to pass through that layer. If
Okay.
you see the whole layer hierarchy as such, like any document that you see on our public documents, everything has, as there is always a loan, including AI. That's where we say like we are always trusted, right? Because the first question that comes to people's mind is like, when I'm using AI, is my data shared with the provider?
Mhm.
Because we provide lots
Yeah.
of models, like from Llama models, Gemma models, OpenAI, and every model is provided by Snowflake. But the first question that comes to everybody's mind is like, is my data shared with another provider? Right? No, because that's where we made a very strong foundation. Like because the foundation of our governance model is so strong,
Yeah.
even even AI it sits on top of it, which means that everything from the data has to pass through your governance layer
I
before
see.
it touches any of the services that we provide, right? So that is something which, again, if you ask me, which is a known unknown factor about Snowflake is this piece, right, where we make it super strong.
What are some of the more interesting applications you're seeing from developers using Snowflake's AI features? For example, Cortex. Like, what are some new and interesting applications you're seeing being built?
I think I don't have a big list for now. Like most predominantly, I'm seeing that you apply them for quite a lot of analytics side of thing. Like given the transformations, your typical ELT, ETL kind of
Yeah.
transformations, like where you don't actually need to do them manually as you used to do earlier. So you just
Yeah.
pass it on to their AI layer, which takes care of doing this stuff. Sentiment analysis is something which we are doing very strongly. And I think as I was talking, Cortex analyst is something like which where you can talk in a natural language question, but it has a very high accuracy text to SQL conversion.
Okay.
And that's another one. So we talked about, I talked about like how do you use MCP kind of thing with Cortex analyst kind of stuff, right, to do the job. And then like we are also trying to bring in some amount of what do you call so data infrastructure stuff that's going to come out. Like I think recent announcement that we made during Summit, like where you'll also be allowed to maintain your old data infrastructure more form. Like look out for those announcements that might come out later, right? So going back to the question on what applications people are building right now, so I don't see most of them right now are all majorities on the AI side of things. Like how do I apply stuff on AI on my data?
Yeah.
So which could be a lot of like building a very high specific chatbot or building a very beautiful dashboard generators using Streamlit.
Okay.
I think those are the ones which people right now are doing, because with Streamlit plus Snowflake,
Yeah.
you have the right combo of getting something working out very quickly, especially from the data dashboard side of things. Obviously, a lot of people are working on publishing something on the marketplace so that they can monetize on the stuff. And all the services, Snowflake Cortex services, you also expose them as REST APIs.
Okay.
So which means that like you can also build a new application on top of it. Like for example,
Oh.
I can write a Cortex search service basically on
Mhm.
top of this REST API, and then expose that service via marketplace or via my own stuff for a monetized thing, right? So which means that like okay, I can act as an interface between my customer and myself, right? So that's another piece of thing which people are building around. I think those are the few things which really strikes my mind quickly.
What are you most excited to build or see others build with Snowflake in the next year?
Definitely, I'm looking out for the agent stuff that we launched, the agent APIs that we launched right now, to see like
Yeah.
how people are using agents, how they bring out those orchestration between various stuff, and building applications more secure way, right? Because that's where our strong philosophy comes in, like easy, connected, and trusted. Like it's always easy to do something. So one of the things which I want to also highlight here is like, so everybody right now, like any technological boom that happens, everybody says, okay, I launched, everybody's giving lots of LLM models, everybody's giving lots of AI services, everybody's
Right.
giving lots of machine learning services, right? But the real distinguisher, what differentiates Snowflake from others, in my personal opinion, if you ask, or even this the more general opinion, is that
Yeah.
how easy is for you to make the thing work, right? As a developer, how easy is for you to onboard. And to be very precise, that's my own experience as well. Before the last year when I joined Snowflake, I don't know anything about Snowflake.
Okay.
But the moment I joined, I was able to learn it so quickly. That platform was so simple and easy to learn that it was not a hard thing for me to kind of learn something very fast, right?
Yeah.
So the distinguisher from people providing AI services is how easy is that AI services for you to use, right?
Mhm.
That's where I totally see Snowflake as a real what you call a demarcator between his other people, right? Whom are providing the service. I don't want to name anybody specifically, but generally. So
Okay.
DevX on your platform is super important. So since I'm being a developer advocate, I always look that first thing out of it.
If you weren't doing developer advocacy, what would you be building right now?
So I always wish to be a pilot since my
Oh.
childhood. That's been my passion. Maybe like definitely if I'm not on the computers, because I landed in computers because I was not able to get into the typical pilot training,
Yeah.
especially not the commercial ones, but I want to fly the Air Force ones.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, so that was always my passion to fly. I think I hope I do one day. I think that's the thing. If I was not doing technology, definitely that would have been something which I'll be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't be building anything. You'd just be flying.
Yeah.
You ready for the lightning round?
Yeah.
30 seconds each for these questions.
Okay. So I have 30 seconds to think.
No, 30 seconds to answer.
For 30 seconds to answer. Fine. Okay, great. Let's go.
No time to think.
Okay, great. Let's try. Let me see how far I can go. Yeah.
Favorite open source tool right now?
Right now, I should definitely say VS Code.
Most underrated part of the Snowflake developer experience.
Snowside.
What is that?
Snowside is the web console where you can do everything within Snowflake.
Oh, okay.
See, that's a whole coming out now.
Piece of Snowflake functionality that is underused.
Definitely the governance side of things.
Yeah.
That's my again all my personal opinions. No, I think yeah.
Dream developers conference to speak at.
DevOps Belgium.
What's the last thing you built for fun?
For fun, like the one which I recently built just few hours before this on using an MCP server using Cortex agents.
Mhm.
That's what the real fun thing which I built. Yeah.
What's your favorite band right now?
Probably like to be very precise, I'm very poor with English music.
Okay.
So I just listen to all Indian music a lot, more softy, more what do you call more in-depth music stuff.
Okay.
The last band, if you ask me, that I still listen is Boyzone.
An activity you enjoy outside of work.
I think I think that I enjoy, if you ask me, like driving. So that's the one which I
Oh.
still enjoy. Yeah.
That can be very meditative.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I think I'm also part of a spiritual organization, so I spend time with that as well. So both, yeah.
Great. All right. Thanks a lot, Kamesh. I really appreciate it.
No worries, Brandon. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Okay,
Bye
you
now.
too. Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe. More interviews and demos coming soon.